The Watcher in the corner. Every night, as the clock chimed 12, my dog Max's barking would pierce the silence of our old house. His fierce growls were directed at the empty corner of the living room, a space so devoid of life it seemed to absorb the very light around it. I had always dismissed it as a quirk of his, a strange habit with no reason behind it. That was until last night. The moon hung heavy in the sky, a pale witness to the night's eerie calm. Max's barks grew more desperate, more urgent. I tried to calm him, but his eyes were fixated on that corner, his body tense and ready to pounce. It was then that I saw them, two glowing orbs floating in the darkness, watching us with an intensity that felt almost personal. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs like a frantic prisoner seeking escape. The eyes blinked once, slowly, and a shiver ran down my spine. Max continued to bark, but there was a protective quality to it now, as if he was standing guard over me. The eyes began to move, gliding upwards until they were level with my own. I could feel their gaze, cold and calculating, weighing my very soul. The air grew thick, charged with a static that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. A voice, barely more than a whisper, filled the room. "You can see me," it said, a statement rather than a question. I couldn't respond, couldn't form the words as fear gripped my throat. Max's barks turned to whines, and he pressed close to my legs, his usual bravado gone. The eyes drew closer, and I could make out a faint outline of a figure, ethereal and shifting. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form, a shadow within shadows. "Why now?" I managed to croak, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The figure chuckled, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Because you're ready," it replied, its voice a melodic hum that resonated with the very walls of the house. "Ready for what?" I asked, but the figure had begun to fade, the eyes dimming until they were nothing but a memory. Max whimpered, nudging my hand with his nose. I looked down at him, seeking comfort in his familiar presence. But as I glanced back at the corner, I realized it wasn't empty anymore. There, in the faint moonlight, stood a faded photograph of a woman I had never seen before, her eyes just as intense as the ones that had vanished into the night. The photograph haunted me. Its edges were frayed, the sepia tones faded with time. The woman's eyes bore into mine, as if she knew my every secret. I searched the attic, the basement, even the dusty old library in town, but there was no record of her existence. No birth certificate, no marriage license, nothing. Max continued to bark at the corner, his eyes never leaving the photograph. I wondered if he saw her too, if he sensed the same otherworldly presence that had invaded our home. The nights grew colder, the air thick with anticipation. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The woman's eyes followed me, even when I closed my own. I began to research, desperate for answers. The local historian, Mrs. Abernathy, had lived in this town for decades. She knew every tale, every legend. When I showed her the photograph, her eyes widened. "The Watcher," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You've seen the Watcher." I pressed her for more information, but she clammed up, refusing to say another word. She handed me an old leather-bound book, its pages brittle and yellowed. "Read this," she said. "It might help." The book was filled with accounts of the Watcher, a guardian spirit, they called her. She appeared to those in need, those who were lost or in danger. But there was a price. The Watcher demanded a sacrifice, a soul to keep her company in the shadows. Those who refused were haunted until they gave in, their lives unraveling like a frayed tapestry. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the pages. The stories were eerily similar, people driven to madness, their screams echoing through the night. And always, the eyes, the glowing orbs that watched, waited. I thought of Max, his loyalty unwavering. Was he my protector or my downfall? The Watcher visited me again, her form shifting from shadow to substance. "You seek answers," she murmured, her voice like wine through ancient trees. "But you already know them. The sacrifice must be made." I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "I won't give in," I said. "Not for myself, not for Max." She laughed, a sound that chilled my bones. You think it's about you, she said. I feed on love, on devotion. Max is your weakness, your heart. He will be the one to pay. I clutched the photograph, my fingers trembling. What do you want from me? I yelled. The watcher leaned closer, her eyes burning into mine. A choice, she said. Your soul or his. Decide. The watcher's words echoed in my mind, a haunting refrain. My soul or Max's. The choice was impossible, yet I knew it had to be made. I couldn't let Max suffer for my curiosity, for my refusal to accept the supernatural. I spent days poring over the old book, seeking loopholes, hidden clues. The watcher remained silent, her eyes watching from the corner. Max grew weaker, his barks fading to feeble whimpers. I couldn't bear to see him suffer, but I couldn't bear to lose him either. One night, as the moon hung low, I sat by the fireplace, the photograph cradled in my hands. The flames danced, casting shadows on the walls. What do you want? I whispered to the watcher. Why Max? She appeared, her form flickering like a dying candle. He is your heart, she said. His loyalty sustains me. But I hunger for more. I clenched my fists. What if I offer myself? I asked. My soul for his. The watcher tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. A tempting offer, she said. But it won't be enough. I crave love, devotion, the very essence of life. I thought of Max, his eyes filled with trust even now. What if I find another? I said. Someone who loves me, who would willingly sacrifice for me. The watcher's laughter sent shivers down my spine. You think love can be manufactured, she said. No, it must be genuine, pure. I had no choice. I scoured the town, seeking someone, anyone, who would love me enough to give their soul. But love was elusive, a fragile thing that slipped through my fingers like sand. The nights grew colder, Max's breath shallower. I was running out of time. Then, in the darkest hour, I found her, a woman with eyes like the watcher's, haunted and wise. She had lost her family, her purpose. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady. For love. I hesitated, torn between gratitude and guilt. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded. Love is worth the sacrifice, she said. Even if it means becoming like her. We stood in the living room, the watcher watching. The woman closed her eyes, her breath slowing. Take me, she whispered. The watcher stepped forward, her form merging with the woman's. The room trembled, the walls cracking. And then, in a burst of light, they were gone. Max lay at my feet, his eyes dimming. Thank you, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. For loving me. But the watcher was not satisfied. Her eyes glowed brighter, her form solidifying. One more, she said. One more soul. I looked at Max, my heart breaking. No, I said. Not him. The watcher's laughter filled the room. Not him, she agreed. You. And so, as the clock chimed midnight, I made my choice. My soul for Max's. The room blurred, reality shifting. And then, darkness. Story 2. The Whispering Doppelganger. I had always been fascinated by the unexplained, those thin veils between reality and the supernatural that most people dare not touch. But nothing could have prepared me for the day a peculiar package arrived at my doorstep. Wrapped in brown paper, it bore no return address, only my name scribbled in a hasty scrawl. Inside was a doll, a spitting image of myself, down to the very last freckle. Its glassy eyes held a depth that seemed almost sentient. As night fell, the house grew quiet, but the silence was deceptive. I could hear it, the faintest whisper, like a secret meant only for me. The doll's lips never moved, yet I felt its presence looming larger with each passing hour. It was as if it watched me, its gaze unyielding and ever-present. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, the product of an overactive imagination fueled by too many horror stories. But then, things began to move. Objects misplaced, doors ajar, and that incessant whispering, growing louder, calling my name in the dead of night. I sought answers, delving into the doll's origins. I scoured the internet, consulted collectors, even dabbled in forums for the paranormally inclined. No one had seen anything like it. It was as if the doll had materialized from thin air, a ghostly artifact with no past and an insidious purpose. The whispers became conversations, the doll's voice a sibilant hiss that filled my dreams with nightmares. It spoke of dark things, of shadows and specters that lurked just beyond the veil. It promised secrets, knowledge of the unknown, but at a price I feared to pay. Tonight, I sit writing this, the doll across the room. Its eyes are on me, unblinking, and the whispers have grown into a cacophony that drowns out all reason. I fear sleep, for it is in dreams that it holds the most power. I am trapped in this waking nightmare, and I dread what might come when the sun sets once more. The doll's presence consumed my every waking moment. Its eyes, those unblinking orbs, bore into my soul. I tried to hide it, to lock it away in the attic, but it always found its way back. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if the doll hungered for something beyond my understanding. My reflection in the mirror became distorted. The lines blurred between me and the doll. Was it a doppelganger? A harbinger of doom? I couldn't tear my gaze away from its porcelain face. It knew my secrets, the ones I dared not utter aloud. And it reveled in my fear. The house itself seemed to shift. Shadows lengthened, walls creaked, and the air grew colder. I heard footsteps in the hallway, but when I investigated, no one was there. The doll sat on the windowsill, moonlight casting eerie shadows across its features. It whispered my name, syllables drawn out like a curse. Sleep eluded me. Each night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the whispers to begin. They spoke of forgotten sins, of promises broken, of a debt that must be paid. I wondered if the doll was a conduit for something darker, a malevolence that had latched onto me. I sought help. Paranormal investigators, priests, even skeptics who scoffed at my tale. They examined the doll, ran tests, but found nothing. The whispers mocked them, weaving through their minds until they questioned their own sanity. The doll was a master manipulator, a puppeteer pulling invisible strings. And then, one stormy night, it moved. I woke to find it perched on my chest, its tiny fingers pressing against my throat. The whispers crescendoed, a chorus of malevolence. I gasped for air, struggling against its weight. The doll's eyes glowed, and I glimpsed something beyond, something ancient and hungry. I managed to fling it across the room, but it returned, relentless. I fled, stumbling down the stairs, the doll hot on my heels. Lightning illuminated its face, revealing a twisted grin. It wanted me to suffer, to pay the price for whatever transgressions had brought it into my life. As I write this, I know the doll is waiting. It sits on the edge of my bed, watching me with those unblinking eyes. The whispers have become screams, and I fear what comes next. My reflection in the mirror no longer resembles me, it's a fractured version, a vessel for something far more sinister. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.